I probably started using firearms on my family's property. I would have been 7 or 8 or something.
If you ask Graham Park, firearms aren't a threat unless you're a problem pig on his rural property.
So you can sort of see down here how the ground's all torn up. We could lose $50,000, $100,000 worth of work in a single evening with these pigs. They're incredibly damaging.
The Queensland farmer's the president of Australia's Shooters Union and one of the country's million-plus legal firearm owners who feel they're being wrongly targeted in the enduring debate about gun control.
In Australia, the mere act of owning a firearm is a political act, and it has been ever since 1996. Most firearm owners don't realise that, and they'll say, I'm not interested in politics. My comment is politics are very interested in you.
This week, Queensland's Parliament will pass legislation that bundles two extremely different issues into a single bill. It's called the Fighting Anti-Semitism and Keeping Guns Out of the Hands of Terrorists and Criminals Amendment Bill 2026.
It certainly tells you exactly what they were wanting. There's no mystery in the title.
Announced in mid-February, the LNP state government says it's about community safety in response to the Bondi terror attack, reports of rising anti-Semitism and threats of extremist violence.
We want to make sure that people of all faiths and backgrounds and beliefs can feel safe. And overwhelmingly, we said we would respond, and respond we have.
Analysts and critics say it's rushed, confusing and potentially dangerous.
So as soon as I see those bizarre titles and things going through Parliament quickly, that raises my antenna, and I want to look a little bit more closely at the detail of the law.
After the Port Arthur massacre in 1996, Australia introduced sweeping national gun reforms, including title licensing and a mandatory buyback. What's this graph showing us, Samara? Dr McPhedran has been monitoring the number of legally registered guns and says since 1996 it's steadily grown to more than 4 million nationally, with just under a third of those in Queensland.
We're looking at a bit over 1.1 million registered firearms.
But at the same time, the number of firearm homicides, the dotted line here, has stayed steady.
What it suggests is that there doesn't seem to be any relationship between the number of legally owned guns and firearm violence in Australia. The numbers that we see there is what the bill is trying to focus on.
Unlike New South Wales and Western Australia, the Queensland government's plan isn't to reduce how many firearms someone can own, and it's ruled out any future buyback. The firearms reform laid out in this bill are complex and many. They include increasing penalties for crimes like drive-by shootings, having blueprints for 3D weapons, and longer jail time for serious offences.
Stiffer penalties can be effective in terms of taking very dangerous people out of circulation. What tends to happen, however, is that others step in to fill their place.
Australia's Gun Safety Alliance says the reforms only enforce tougher penalties once a crime's been committed, calling them the weakest gun laws in Australia. Can you appreciate why people who might not be on your side and they just want to get rid of guns?
I guess we can make the same argument, why don't we ban cars? We'll have less car accidents. It's not a practical outcome.
Separately, in response to the infamous 2022 Williambilla shootings, the LNP introduced a ministerial directive requiring health workers to report patients they believe pose a risk.
So psychologists, psychiatrists, they cannot predict what a person is going to do, nor should they be expected to. To claim that people with mental illness are more dangerous than other people is simply not correct, and it's also very stigmatising of people with mental illness.
The other half of the bill deals with proposed changes to hate speech laws. The legislation is being amended to outlaw two expressions, including this one,
"From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free."
and globalise the intifada. Using those in public could become a criminal offence.
So there's a whole suite of laws that already exist. And so you do have to ask yourself, well, why do we need this extra one? Is it about the politics?
The bill has left scope to add further phrases to the banned list, but any additions would be scrutinised by Parliament.
How is it going to be used in 5 years' time or 10 years' time or 20 years' time? What slogans are people going to ban? What kinds of expressions or speech will be restricted in the future?
Debate over the bill got underway in Parliament earlier today. One of the unanswered questions remains, how will police actually enforce these new hate speech offences, especially in a dynamic protest environment like this one this evening?
It's only a criminal offence if you publicly recite or publish the banned expression in a way that might reasonably be expected to cause a member of the public to feel menaced, harassed or offended.
Police leaders said they'll rely on officer discretion, making judgments case by case.
In simple terms, I'd suggest that police officers at protests would choose their moment and choose their mark.
The concern being it'll lead to inconsistent policing.
If they're going to try and arrest 50,000, 60,000 people in Brisbane like we saw last year, they're going to have a pretty hard time of it.
Tensions have been running high inside those walls too. At one point, the bill's debate descended into a total screaming session. The Deputy Premier alleged a far north Queensland MP had liked and shared what he said was anti-Semitic content on social media.
What is the Leader of the Opposition going to do about the member for Cairns? The member for Cairns is an anti-Semite.
I take offence and I ask that the member withdraw.
Member's taken personal offence. I withdraw.
Despite those distractions, with no upper house in Queensland's Parliament, the bill will pass by Thursday, though it's still unclear what the final version will look like. Two very different issues, one very long bill, and a lot of unanswered questions.